Okay, now let's move on to Laputa, Castle in the Sky. It's Laputa today. Well, I discussed the content and theme in the episodes on January 7th and 14th in 2018. So this time, I'd like to approach Laputa from a different perspective. This is the concept image of the slag ravine that appears in Laputa. This was drawn by Miyazaki early on in his career. What I want to talk about this time is the story of the slag ravine where Pazu was born and raised. What kind of place is the slag ravine? Laputa was originally planned by Miyazaki as a TV series long ago, so there are hours and weeks worth of episodes about this slag ravine. Ultimately, the ravine appears in the feature film Laputa, Castle in the Sky. There were actually a lot of ideas and episodes Miyazaki planned, but never came to fruition due to time constraints for the movie. I call these ideas Laputa's relics, and there are moments where these early ideas pop up here and there in the feature film Laputa. So let's talk about Laputa's relics today. As an anime, Laputa is very easy for me to discuss, because Isao Takahata, a former animation director of Ghibli, was the producer in addition to Laputa. Takahata produced Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. That means he really cracked the whip on Miyazaki. For example, when the complete picture of Laputa, the castle, was unclear, Takahata convinced Miyazaki that the audience wouldn't understand the story well unless he showed the whole picture of the castle. So Laputa was well supervised by Takahata. After that, the two of them began to work on their own movies, My Neighbor Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies, which led to Miyazaki relinquishing his strict rules as a producer. Although Miyazaki was worried about Takahata's opinions, he could produce his movies more freely. So Nausicaa and Laputa are, let's say, their stories have a very strong backbone. That's why there's a lot to say about these works. There are many components to Laputa that were left out that we can easily find and discuss. This time, in order to explain about the slag ravine, I made a simple model of its terrain and features. What kind of place is mine to the villagers? Why is the town scattered around the valley? Why does the town exist even at the bottom of a valley? Why is there a running train here? Why is Pazu's house on top of the valley? What's inside this huge hole? What is a mine? We can understand such various mysteries by creating this topographic map. To begin with, what's a slag? The story of Behind the Slag Ravine is the first Laputa relic I'll address today. On to part 2. Here's a small model of Laputa. This castle in the sky is where the climax scene occurs. As you can see from this model, part of the castle has collapsed at the back. It's been destroyed and not in perfect form. By observing this collapsed part, some of you may imagine how Laputa used to be a magnificent castle in perfect form. The size of this Laputa, strangely, has been widely debated, but nothing is official. This is because there are a number of inconsistent depictions about the size in the movie, so an official figure couldn't be determined. But in today's episode, we'll investigate Laputa from different angles on screen. And, oops, I can't put this down properly. We've succeeded in determining the size of Laputa. We finally discovered that the size of Laputa in the movie is 1,760 meters in diameter. 1.7 kilometers, so it's about the same size as the Imperial Palace in the center of Tokyo or Osaka Castle. But even this huge Laputa is actually just the remains following a massive collapse. Originally, Laputa was already floating in the sky, ruling over everything on land 2,500 years ago. But that wasn't the same Laputa of today that collapsed. They're not the same. So how do I explain it? How should I explain? When I say perfect form, how do I explain it? It makes me want to use Dragon Ball as an example. Oh well, the perfect form of Laputa is 5.4 kilometers in diameter, 3.7 kilometers in height, which is almost the same size as Mount Fuji. Its width is almost equivalent to Mount Fuji, including the southern area called Mount Hoi. The Laputa in its perfect form is 100 meters higher than Mount Fuji. Let's see, just consider the difference in strength between the first Frieza in a wheelchair-looking thing and Frieza in perfect form, not the size. Maybe this isn't the best example. If the first one is the Slag Ravine, the second relic is Laputa itself, which existed in the sky 2,500 years ago. I'd like to create the perfect form of a giant Laputa in the sky. The third Laputa relic is Uncle Palm. Uncle Palm plays a really important role. Pazu and Sheeta meet this kind old man underneath the Slag Ravine. I think a lot of people aren't aware of the importance of this old man. For example, Uncle Palm appears for 5 minutes in a 124-minute movie. In terms of the length of speaking time, Uncle Palm's is the longest after Pazu, Sheeta, and Captain Dola. In fact, Uncle Palm talks more than the villain, Colonel Muska. That's how important this character is. Uncle Palm only appears in scenes with Pazu and Sheeta with no one else. That's why Uncle Palm is the most important character that appears in the movie. Miyazaki had to cut down various lines and scenes in order to keep the movie length to 124 minutes. He cut out many scenes, but still couldn't make Uncle Palm's appearance fall below 5 minutes. So, who is Uncle Palm? And what does his character symbolize? Now, here's the last scene Uncle Palm appears in. Uncle Palm is left in the dark hole. This is the hole he's left in. And here, Pazu is calling Sheeta, "Come this way!" into a world full of light. What did Miyazaki try to convey with this casual scene? In the third Laputa relic, I'd like to discuss Uncle Palm and investigate his puzzling character in depth. And today's urban legend, as you already know, I discuss slightly strange or scary stories during each episode. And today's topic is a legendary floating empire. Laputa appears in Gulliver's Travels, which was written by Jonathan Swift in the 18th century. In the book, there is a country of dwarfs, Lilliput, and giants. Brobodingnag is quite hard to pronounce. The flying kingdom of Laputa also appears later. Back then, there were many discoveries of dwarfed races in Africa and Asia, as well as excavations of bones of giant beings. So Swift was greatly influenced by this news. In this way, Gulliver's Travels is a sort of political satire, and Swift wasn't writing a story that lacked an original source. So, what was the original story behind the floating empire Laputa? It's said to be based on a real-life incident. And what was the kingdom floating in the sky? I'd like to get into those details later. Here's an image from Gulliver's Travels.